Madam Mayor, Deputy Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to extend to all of you a very warm welcome to this 8th Trondheim Conference on Biodiversity. We are in a city, and I'm sure the Mayor will come back to this, a city that is accustomed to visitors. This city is home to the Nidaros Cathedral, which is the world's northernmost medieval cathedral and Norway's national sanctuary. It was erected almost 1,000 years ago over the tomb of Saint Olav, the Viking king who went on to become Norway's patron saint. And therefore, Trondheim is also the northernmost historical pilgrim destination in Europe. And it is encouraging today to see so many biodiversity pilgrims having found their way to this gathering. It does affirm the seriousness with which the global community regards the importance of biodiversity and ecosystems for agriculture and food systems. It is actually quite intriguing that some of the really big issues of our time pertaining to security and economy and the condition of human beings, some of those very big issues relate to some very small organisms of nature, such as pollinators. Food security is at the heart of this conference topic. Food security is about securing food for people, but it is obviously also about the security implications when food is in shortage. In recent years, we've seen dramatic upheavals that, and here I shouldn't establish causality, but clearly upheavals that have a complicated interplay with situations of drought, situations of food shortages, situation of biodiversity degradation. We have seen in the Middle East upheavals. We've seen how environmental and climate change issues are magnifiers of the conflict potential in society with enormous spillover effects, including to Europe. In terms of economy, the recent report by IPBES shows that the value of pollinators equals about 5 Norwegian national budgets. And these are values that are partly at risk. So these very small things that we often don't think about and that are certainly not at the heart of political debate are really, in real terms, at the heart of some of the big political issues of our time. If the world is to feed 7 billion people and leading up to 2050, 9 billion people, then producing sufficient, safe and nutritious quality food for all in a way that also keeps humanity's footprint within nature's boundaries will be central. While the human population has more than doubled in the space of just 2 generations, the natural resource base available for food production is limited. And this realization is reflected in 2 landmark global agreements that we've seen come into being over the last year, and that together with the the Biological Diversity Convention should inspire us at this conference. I'm talking about, firstly, the 2030 Agenda for Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals that puts emphasis on biodiversity as well as food security and agriculture. And secondly, the Paris Agreement, which recognize, and I quote, the fundamental priority of safeguarding food security and ending hunger, and the particular vulnerabilities of food production systems to the adverse effects of climate change, unquote. The strong wording of these objectives reflect the urgent challenge we face with food security. There are several factors that underpin food security, starting with access to food and the availability of food. As a Norwegian member of government, I would fail to do my job if I didn't in this context highlight the importance of fisheries and aquaculture to world food production and food security. And being here in Trondheim, there is good reason to do just that. I hope you'll have the opportunity to get a taste during the course of your visit of Norway's very climate-friendly source of protein for the world. Food production and consumption is highly resource intensive. All food systems rely upon natural resources such as water, biodiversity, healthy and fertile soil, or the sea. However, in many regions, resources are being depleted. New information from the FAO is reporting that approximately 30% of world's fish stocks are reported as being fished at an unsustainable level. At the same time, nearly 1 billion people are already food insecure, unable to produce or buy sufficient amounts of nutritious foods. Millions of children go hungry every night and die of malnutrition. And on the other hand, let's not forget the fact that over 1 billion people in the world are now considered overweight or obese. In one way or another, a big part of the world population finds itself on the wrong side of the food equation. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also shows that food security is threatened in several regions due to various forms of extreme weather conditions, including droughts and flooding. However, there is also scope for significant adaptation by modifying agricultural practices and using new varieties of plants. This can't be done overnight. Genetic material that may be needed for agriculture 20 years into the future might be seriously in danger due to biodiversity loss in the wild as well as in farmers' fields. This material must be identified, conserved, and made available for agriculture and food security, a process that can take years and have to start now. In addition to this, significant amounts of energy are used in producing agricultural inputs and in post-harvesting processing, transport, and distribution of food. Agriculture is a major user of ground and surface water, accounting for approximately 70% of the water used in the world today. Soils are the basis for more than 90% of food production, and yet every year approximately 24 billion tons of fertile soil are lost due to erosion. It is also a paradox that the waste and loss from the global food system can correspond to 30% of all the food produced. We might be wasting as much as 2 billion tons of food a year globally. As part of the SDGs, the global community has committed to halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chains. This is an important challenge. Norway is committed to contribute to the achievement of this goal. We have already come a long way in recognizing the interlinkages of ecosystems, agricultural systems, food processing, distribution, and consumption. We need to act on this knowledge more forcefully if we are to make progress. Climate change presents a serious threat to the global food system. The latest report from the IPCC shows that regions with a low level of food security are also the most vulnerable to future climate change. A recent report from the Max Planck Institute in Germany concludes that large parts of the Middle East and North Africa could become so hot that human habitability is compromised. There are roughly 500 million people living in this region today. If their livelihoods disappear, well, I did mention upheavals earlier, we know what might happen and we know where they would be heading. More than 3 million hectares of forests are being cleared each year, mostly for agricultural expansion in the tropics. This happens even though we know that a quarter of the solution to the climate change challenge rests with forests. Deforestation coupled with poor agricultural productivity is a lose-lose situation. We simply can't continue business as usual as our response to these challenges. Deforestation due to food production must be stopped. We need a new approach to land use, which is climate friendly and also fulfilling the right to food, which is more productive and increases the resilience of ecosystems and of societies. To meet increasing demands for food, we need to produce more and with less resources. And we do know that this can be achieved. A sustainable food production system is needed. that doesn't exceed the carrying capacity of its local ecosystem, and which recognizes that soils, biodiversity, and water are among the planet's most vital resources. Healthy topsoil is essential. It acts as a buffer against drought and as a carbon sink, and it is the primary source of the health of all animals, plants, and people. If land degradation continues, well, then nature's capital will lose its innate resilience, and it won't be very long before our human economic capital and economic systems also begin to lose their resilience. The environment supports agriculture in two fundamental ways. Natural resources, such as fertile land and adequate supplies of fresh water, are one domain. The other is the planet's ecosystem services, such as the nutrition, recycling and soil stabilization provided by forests and biodiversity, including pollination services by insects, such as bees. Economists give us a way to think about this challenge by talking about negative externalities. Negative externalities are costs of producing foods that the market doesn't account for. For instance, if a farmer doesn't pay for the water he or she uses, then the value of the water would be external to the price consumers pay for the food, and hence there would be no incentive for the farmer to conserve this resource. Well, there's a lot of good things to be said about bees, but they don't send you an invoice for their pollination. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of resources out there. We know about them, but we need also to take them into account when we make decisions going forward. The International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems will launch its report during this conference. This report is addressing all the dimensions of sustainable food production: economic, environmental, social, and nutrition and health. The report is addressing a potential paradigm shift in agriculture, and I'm sure that it will stimulate the discussions here in Trondheim. Studies show that making the right investments in sustainable food systems is vital from the environmental, social, and economic standpoint. These systems must also be built upon a strong collaboration among farmers, fishermen, governments, the private sector, consumers, and civil society. Partnership has never been more needed, and I'm tremendously inspired by what we see in terms of recent initiatives by the private sector, not least in the consumer goods sphere. You can't help but being quite hopeful when huge corporations like Unilever take the lead. Industry is clearly listening, and industry is clearly acting. And at times, the time it takes for industry to go from listening to acting is a bit speedier than the time it tends to take for politics to move from listening to acting. And that's why the leadership provided by business close to the markets is essential. All key sectors and players throughout the food system must be involved to make better use of food systems for improved sustainability. It requires better governance based on sound data, a common vision, and above all, political determination and leadership. Today we have a framework for addressing our current land use dilemma. The Sustainable Development Goals offer a unique opportunity to shape policies over the next 15 years towards a more sustainable use of productive land and our natural habitats. But we still need, even if we have a lot of knowledge, and even if you gathered in this hall have produced much of that knowledge, we need more knowledge to make better policies. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Norse mythology, but one of our principal gods in Norse mythology, Woden, was a relentless seeker of knowledge and wisdom, and willing to sacrifice almost anything in this pursuit. He had his two ravens, Hugin and Munin, which is sent around the world to gather information. And the story says that Woden even went so far as sacrificing his own eye for more wisdom. I think we need, in Norway and elsewhere, to take inspiration from this willingness to sacrifice for knowledge. But more importantly, today we risk making big sacrifices in the future unless we act on the knowledge we already have and develop more knowledge. This is especially important in the area of environment. Improved dialogue between the scientific and policy-making communities is necessary. It is important for researchers to communicate scientific findings in an accessible way to policymakers in order for us to make the right choices. And it is important for policymakers to lend a listening ear to your ever clearer communication of scientific findings. A country that is showing the way in this context is Mexico, and I'd like to congratulate Mexico and their bold commitment to advance the sometimes difficult discussions of mainstreaming biodiversity into other sectors of society. Biodiversity is important in itself. We have to stop the loss of biodiversity. We have to stop the loss because today's biodiversity is critical for tomorrow's food systems, and biodiversity is our insurance for a changing environment. I wish you a fruitful and successful conference that will inspire us all and that will indeed contribute to making the 13th Conference of Parties in Mexico a big success. Thank you very much.